Hey everybody, it's Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, where I go on a weekend cruise just about every weekend. And so far, my morning is starting out pretty rough. You can see that, I look a little tired. It is early in the morning here. And so I went to go shoot the video and realized that I left my tripod on Vision of the Seas. So I need to go through and add that to my lessons learned, is always check your cabin. I thought I did a good job, but apparently I missed some things. But from there, wanted to talk to you all about how to plan and prepare for your first Mediterranean cruise, or any Mediterranean cruise for that matter. And so to start off on the plan side of the house, you want to really focus in on what ship you're going to be taking. Now, ship size is the most important thing here. So you've got what I call big ships and small ships. Nobody really talks about the medium-sized ships, but they're a thing too. So you're going to want to see, which one is going to be correct for you. So if you're looking for a larger ship, this is going to mean that you're going to have a lot more to do. It means you'll probably have a sea day because they want you to spend time and your money on the cruise ship. But the kids are really going to love this. It's going to have a lot better shows. It's going to have Broadway-style entertainment. It's going to have the Aqua Theater. So it is a really, really great ship to sail on. However, this ship also is going to cause you not to go to some of the more smaller ports that the big boys just can't get into. So if you are, looking at going to different ports and maybe going off the beaten path, you would want to look at the smaller ships. This is also going to be a older style crowd because, again, not as much for the kids to do. So your age range is going to be a little bit higher, which I don't think is a bad thing. When I was there, the age range was not as bad as I thought. It was actually a fairly middle-aged crowd, which I may or may not be a part of these days. So you've got the smaller ships. It's not going to have the best entertainment. It's still going to have headliner shows and your Royal Caribbean singers and dancers, but it's not going to have the big style production shows, and it's going to have limited specialty dining and restaurants for you to be able to dine in. From there, the next big thing that's going to matter is what port you sail out of. So where is that ship home ported that you're going to board the ship? And so this is going to really dictate where your ship's going to go and what you're going to be seeing. If you are sailing out of, let's say, Rome or Barcelona, you're probably going to be seeing the Western Mediterranean of Spain, France, and Italy, versus if you choose Haifa, Israel, you may choose Athens, Greece, or even Venice, you're going to see more of the Eastern Mediterranean, which is going to give you Greece, it's going to give you Cyprus, it's going to give you Montenegro, Turkey maybe even. There's a lot of great options that you can get depending on where you sail out of. So once you determine what kind of ship you want, which I think is actually pretty important, you're then going to look at, where does that ship sail from? Is that a port that I want to sail from, and does it match where I want to go on my itinerary? The next thing, and the last thing you kind of want to do, is really think through how much is airfare for those cruise ports. So if you are flying to Barcelona, Rome, Greece, the prices could be very, very different for your airfare. And so that is a big consideration when you are traveling, especially for the US viewers, over to Europe. You want to make sure that your family of four is not paying $300 more for a flight. It may make the cruise not financially worth it. So always, before you book, make sure you're also checking airfare. Don't book it and then check airfare, because you might get quite a surprise, especially if you're trying to travel in the summer. After you have planned your cruise and you know what cruise you're going on, where it's going to be going, the next thing you're going to do is prepare for your cruise. So the first thing that you always want to do here, and I've made some videos on this, is you want to make sure you are checking the COVID policies for anywhere you're going, recognizing that, a lot of policies are different than what we have here in the US, and we may not be familiar with it. They also change frequently, and especially in Europe, it's in a region kind of basis. So you want to make sure that you are getting the latest and greatest so that you will have no issues going over there with COVID or whatever, the virus or epidemiology thing of the day may be. From there, I always think that it's a good idea to really get a good sense of what is the weather going to be like on your trip. So the Mediterranean, can have a Caribbean kind of feel to it. When I was there in the middle of September, or the first part of September, I should say, it was hot. It was very, very hot, hotter than I expected, but it can also be cool. So you want to make sure that you're pulling a farmer's almanac to get, kind of a sense of how you need to be packing for this trip. And then as it gets closer, definitely check out the 10-day forecast. Of course, these can all change, but make sure that you are prepared and kind of know about what the weather can be, because if you're going over there, hopefully you're going for a few days. And so that'll bring me to my third thing here, is try to plan to go early. So if you can, go over to your port, whether it's Barcelona, Rome, Venice, a few days early. And this is going to do a few things. First, it's going to allow you to really immerse yourself in that city. You're going to get to explore and feel like what it's like to live in one of these cities for 2 or 3 days. The second thing that it's going to do is it's going to allow you to get used to the time change difference. Now, for me on the East Coast of the US, it is a 6-hour ahead kind of situation. So when I fly over, I try to go ahead and fall asleep as quick as I can on the plane in order to wake up and be ready to go first thing when I get to Europe. But you know, if you go over a few days before, it gets you kind of in the mood. You can kind of go at your own leisure. Versus if you fly in and go straight to the cruise ship, you're going to have to switch like that to the new time zone because food and all that still happens at the same exact time. And you might not be quite prepared. It might be a little bit more of a jolt to your system versus coming a few days early and being able to more easily acclimate to the time difference. The fourth thing you're going to want to do is check your connectivity options. So when you are preparing to go over to the Mediterranean, to Europe, you want to see how you're going to be able to stay connected in international ports. And so the biggest thing for me is just knowing that when I am walking around Valencia, Ibiza, Palma de Mallorca, I can pull up Google Maps on my phone and it's going to show me where I need to go to get to whatever the site is that I want to see. Or if I just randomly start walking the streets and kind of, go wherever, I want to know that I can find my way back to the ship because I'm not always the best with directions. So you want to make sure that you're checking out your sail plan from wherever country you're coming from and that it's going to allow you to have complimentary international data. So there are tons of sail plans out there. I've thought about making a video just for that, but it is really complicated to talk about AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. There's too many options to get into it and they're all unique. So I have not done that, but make sure you're doing your research on it. What I will say, and this may be a pro tip for some of you trying to save money, is if you are looking at going over, especially a few days before, you can swing by one of the many cell phone provider stores over in Europe and pick up a SIM card or an eSIM for your phone. This is going to give you the fastest speeds on your phone. So you're going to get 4G or 5G depending on where you're at local speeds. And their data packages are really good. So you won't be able to make long distance calls back to the US on this, but you will get, several gigabytes of data that you can use to send message, to do video calls, to use Google Maps and kind of figure out where all you're going. And the plans are like $50 for a month. It's not bad. So if you are like me and you went on a cruise that stopped in a port every single day, this might actually be a great alternative to not buying the Royal Caribbean ship Wi-Fi, which can be pretty expensive. That can be like $20 a day. And so if you can just have an eSIM or a SIM card that you can put in your phone from one of the foreign locations, number one, if you're going to a port every day, chances are you're not getting too far away from land and you'll still be able to use it a little bit. But even if you have to go, let's say from 8 p.m. until 6 in the morning without reception, that's not really horrible either. That's a really small blackout window for you to save potentially a significant amount of money and also have really good reception when you are in port, which is pretty important. The fifth thing that you're going to want to do is for all these connectivities for your iPads, for your phones, you're going to want to make sure that you bring European adapters. So check out online what region you're going to. I'll link down in the comments to the one that I use. It is really cheap because I wind up leaving those in the cabin as well. I've done that before. So make sure that you are bringing converters if you're coming from a different country. So if you're coming from the US over to Europe, you will not be able to just plug in directly into your hotel's socket, or if you're at the airport trying to charge, you're going to need somewhere to plug in. The good news on going on a cruise, though, is that that cruise ship is going to have both options for you. It's going to have the US standard and it's going to have a European plug that you can use as well. So the bonus to this is if you do buy that European converter that you're using maybe in your hotel or at the airport emergency situations, you're going to be able to plug that into the socket when you get onto the cruise ship, and it's going to give you even more outlets that you now can use to charge your devices and stay connected. So from my last trip, there's a few things that I wish that I would have brought that I did not bring. And a lot of those revolved around the sun. So the first thing, I wish I would have had a hat. I'm not really a hat guy, you guys know that. But I wish with the sun as bright as it was in some of these ports that I would have had a hat and I would have brought more sunscreen. Sunscreen that I bought there was about €20, which is pretty darn expensive. So if you can bring that over, make sure you're doing that. I'll also link to the 3-ounce sunscreen bottles that I personally really like down in the comments, or excuse me, in the description, so that you can actually get that through the TSA pre-check and over through Europe. But make sure that you are understanding what the requirements are if you are doing a transfer in Europe. I would also bring some euro. So one thing that I didn't do was come with euro, and I kind of wish that I had some, because there are places where their credit card machine wasn't working, or maybe they just didn't accept anything. I wanted to buy something off the street. I wish that I would have had a little bit of euro, and to start off with, I would say just 100 euro should be able to do the trick for you. Depending on your shopping needs or what you do and the way you like to buy things, you can do a lot less, but I have a credit card that doesn't have any transaction fees on it or foreign transaction fees. And so with that, I try to use my credit card all the time versus using euro, but I still wish that I would have brought some and come a little bit more prepared. I also would have brought some good tested walking shoes. So we went hiking mistakenly, I guess, up to see a cathedral in one of the ports, and the back of my heel got rubbed raw from walking up these stairs. And so I would tell you, make sure that you bring good shoes, but that you've worn them for an extended period of time and that you have walked in these shoes before. There's pharmacies everywhere, luckily, kind of like our CVS. There's pharmacias everywhere when you go to Europe, so you can find Band-Aids for your feet. But if you can avoid the Band-Aid situation, I would highly recommend it. Just bring really good shoes that you know are gonna work. Who cares what they look like? Just make sure they're gonna work for a lot of walking. The other thing that I wish I would have bought was a really small bag. So I travel with a really large backpack, and traditionally I will try to pack like a little tote bag or something small inside of it. For when I am walking around the city, I can bring my sunglasses, maybe I can get my wallet out of my back pocket, I can bring the camera. I didn't bring that this trip because my suitcase was kind of full. And so when we were walking, luckily my friend that I was traveling with had a backpack that we could, throw everything in. But I wish I would have had something myself so I wasn't relying on him to carry my stuff around. He was very kind to do that, but I wish that I would have had my own. So that leads me to my segue of items not to bring. So when you are preparing for this, here's some things that you do not want to bring. So the first is you don't want to bring too much. So the shopping over here was probably one of my favorite things, and I bought a lot of stuff that I now need to fly back. And quite frankly, I don't like buying a suitcase to come back with. You can always do that. It's a solid backup plan, but leave a little bit of room so that you can go shopping and you don't feel bad or have to buy another suitcase. Follow EU policies. And so I mentioned this a little bit before, but please make sure you're reading up on the security protocols for transfers in European airports. You do have to go through their screening process, similar to our TSA, but it has different policies, such as that 1-quart clear plastic bag for liquids only. So when I flew through, I had 2 of these bags, not realizing I needed to have 1, and they tried confiscating or trashing some of my more expensive items. And so luckily we corrected that, and I was able to trash deodorant and I think a hair cream versus some of the more expensive things in this bag. But make sure that you're not falling into that same trap that I did, because I don't like showing up and not having deodorant. All right, so those are some of my ways of how I would plan and prepare for a Mediterranean cruise if I had to do it again. If you're looking for some of my lessons learned, make sure that you're following up on this next video on even more lessons that I learned and things that I quite frankly just didn't plan for. All right, everyone, this is Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, hoping to see you on a weekend cruise soon.